This is a A6 that I purchased and already sold going on, I don't know, probably about 7 months ago. But I ended up with a coolant leak on this one, big surprise. Still the original water pump. Nothing's wrong with it though. This engine only has, it had 78,000 miles on it, I believe, whenever I sold it. And I only do a few of these a year. This is mainly a hobby, but for all you inquisitive minds out there, just enough for me to call it a hobby. And now I'm doing YouTube as a hobby. So I think that it was actually leaking at this O-ring spot right here, because this O-ring was, this is actually a common spot for them to leak at this O-ring. This O-ring was expanded and it did not fit over the pipe properly. Give me a second and I'll give you a stinking example. And you see how loose that O-ring is. I believe that was the issue, but instead of just replacing the O-ring and going on, I had to do it dealership style. They got a water pump. I have to use a little bit of intuition. The water pumps are known to fail. I'm not going to put an O-ring on it and then send them on their way, and then 2 weeks later, the water pump fails. You just looked at this. You just worked on this. No, we can't do that. We would rather over-fix the car in these scenarios than under-fix it always. Especially on something like a cooling system where you can't just keep on driving it. You have to fix it. If it's leaking coolant, if you don't fix it, you can destroy the whole engine because it can overheat. The cooling system regulates the temperature of the engine. So this particular car, I did my first aluminum water pump. And I didn't take any footage whatsoever. I'll show you the different pumps off the car. So some people were asking about the aluminum water pumps, and honestly, I hadn't tried them yet. But, you know, typically I stick with what I have experience with. But, you know, I'm not opposed to stepping outside and trying different things. So there's a couple different brands right here. First off, can you just tell by looking at them, you know, they might look identical. You know, this one's missing the coolant temp sensor, but this one's straight from China. And according to the print, this one is straight from Germany, made in Germany. You know, they can be real sneaky about that kind of stuff. But anyway, this one was very cheap. This one was very expensive. About 3 times the cost of this one right here. And, you know, this is the cheapest way you can get it without the coolant temp sensor. You can swap that over. But this one here, I'll go ahead and just say, I got from Rock Auto, so I got it from a reputable source. It has a name attached to it. It's not a no-name. It's a CRP Automotive. It came with the seals, a new belt, and bolts. There's a belt in there, which I won't be needing, but I'll keep it for the future. Let's take a closer look at these pumps. What kind of quality are you getting? You know, to tell you the honest truth, When it comes to parts, the stuff on the inside of the engine, I'm always going to suggest top dollar stuff. On the outside of the engine, especially someone like me, you can take some liberties because I can change these pumps really fast. But this is also a part that when it fails, it's going to leak your coolant out. It could possibly damage your engine if you overheat. So do you really want to cheap out? We're talking not very much money. When you're talking about transportation, why would you want to cheap out when you can spend, the money to not have to pay a tow bill on the side of the road when it's cold outside or something? So, but that's just how I feel about my parts. These might last a really long time. These might last longer than the stock water pumps. But first, let's take a look at the back here. We got the same but different looking bolts on the bottom here. We got like a black washer on both sides. They do look extremely familiar. It almost seems like they're the same quality of metal as well. They are not identical though. For instance, if we flip them to this side here, let me see if I can. This one to the left definitely does not say made in Germany. And this is called the pump face. We got a circle there, and on this side it's built different. We got our Loctite on all of our screws on this made in Germany one. The snout has some writing on it. It says Italy. That snout, nothing. So yeah, I'm convinced that the high dollar one is, you're getting what you pay for. Let's look at the casting. See how etchy and sketchy that Chinese one is? Now let's say this is like an intake manifold or something. This is the same kind of quality you're gonna get from like a exhaust pipe or intake manifold or whatever when you buy quality versus Chinese. And a lot of times I've heard that if you do buy the cheap water pump, you want to put your factory sensor in it anyway because those cheap sensors are often faulty. So when I need to replace them and someone doesn't have a lot of money, I have the cheap ones on hand. I also want to have at least one good one on hand, but to tell you the truth, I'm going to be putting good parts on my own car. That's what you're going to find typically is when you buy a used car, it's not probably going to have the highest dollar parts on it. That's just the way it is because everyone is like this almost. I mean, the price drives the market. So it doesn't make sense for people to put the highest dollar parts on it and then sell it. But whenever you're fixing your own car, it makes the most sense to put the highest dollar parts on it if you're planning on keeping it. That's why, sometimes if someone's selling a car and they put a bunch of high dollar parts on it, it really is worth a lot more than, there's a lot going on with that. I can't get too deep and off track, but these are water pumps. I like quality, expensive parts. The one I put on that car was the budget water pump, so I will give you feedback if it fails prematurely. But there you have it. Is there anything else to look at this? Well, I got it here. Oh yeah, this thermostat. The thermostat definitely looked different, and I'm assuming everything's going to be better on the more expensive one. But this thermostat also did look beefier. See the casting. Let's look at the casting on this one. Beautiful casting on that one. You're gonna find the same thing when it comes to intake, or I'm sorry, cylinder heads. If you buy a cheap Chinese cylinder head, you're gonna have crummy casting, crummy metal, porous type metal. It's not gonna be quality. Everything's gonna be the cheapest as possible. Scenic view. Here at Philadelphia Copart, getting ready to pick up one. Had a little mishap with the bearing cap on that. Got about an hour away from home and realized I was missing it and went back home and got one from my parts dolly. Unfortunately, it's not really a parts dolly. The one I got at home is still nice, but I've been robbing parts off of it. But little update. Pulling with the Avant. A Naptown tuner. Here at Naptown Tuner Garage, we got the best deals on this side of the Mississippi. Tampa Bay. Yeah, you see them palm trees? I ain't lying. Definitely sounds like a rod knock. Something's not so happy in the bottom end. I don't want to lock it up, so that's all I'm going to give you. And I'm almost positive that everything in the engine's junk based on that sound.